Marine Sergeant Kang Tae-min stood perfectly still in the long hallway. The walls around him were white and clean, like everything else on the space station. He had been standing there for 20 minutes, waiting for the ceremony to begin. His uniform was pressed and perfect. His boots shone like mirrors. Everything had to be just right today. Today was important. Today humans would meet the leaders of other worlds for the first time as equals. For years, the aliens had watched Earth from far away. They had seen humans fight wars and build cities. They had seen humans fly to the moon and create amazing machines, but they had always thought humans were too violent, too wild to join their group of peaceful worlds. That changed 6 months ago. A human scientist named Dr. Yu had solved an old problem that had puzzled alien minds for hundreds of years. She had found a way to make faster-than-light travel much safer and cheaper. Suddenly, every alien race wanted to be friends with humans. Tae-min heard footsteps coming down the hall. Ambassador Park Sora walked toward him, wearing a dark blue dress that made her look important and serious. Behind her came 5 other humans, all dressed in their best clothes. They were the team that would represent all of humanity today. "Are you ready, Sergeant?" Park asked. Her voice was calm, but Tae-min could see worry in her eyes. "Yes, ma'am," Tae-min replied. He had been a Marine for 8 years. He had served in 3 different wars on Earth. But today felt different. Today, he was not just representing his country. He was representing his entire species. Park nodded and looked at his equipment. Tae-min carried a standard plasma rifle on his back. He had a sidearm on his hip. Various tools and devices hung from his belt. Everything was normal for a Marine bodyguard, except for one thing. Strapped to his right thigh was a simple combat knife. It was made of steel and had a black handle. It looked very old compared to all the high-tech weapons around it. "Remember," Park said quietly, "some of these aliens have never seen humans before. They only know stories about us. We need to show them that we are civilized people who can be trusted." The doors at the end of the hall opened with a soft sound. Bright light poured in from the ceremony room beyond. Park took a deep breath and started walking. Tae-min followed 2 steps behind her, just like he had practiced. The ceremony room was huge. The ceiling was so high that Tae-min could barely see it. Hundreds of beings from different worlds sat in floating chairs that moved slowly around the room. Some aliens looked almost human, just with different colored skin or strange eyes. Others looked like giant insects or walking trees or things that Tae-min had no words for. In the center of the room was a raised platform. On it stood the leaders of the 5 most powerful alien races. Tae-min recognized them from the photos he had studied. There was the tall, gray being from the Centauri Council. There was the floating jellyfish-like creature from the deep worlds. And there, clicking his mandibles together, was Kliktar from the Velthari Empire. The Velthari looked like giant praying mantises that walked on 2 legs. They were green and brown with 4 arms and huge compound eyes. Kliktar was bigger than the others, which meant he was important. His chitinous armor plates shone under the lights. As the human group walked to the platform, Tae-min felt hundreds of alien eyes watching him. Some looked curious. Some looked afraid. Some looked like they were judging whether humans deserved to be here. Park stepped onto the platform and bowed slightly to each alien leader. "Honored beings," she said. "I am Ambassador Park Sora, speaking for all humans on Earth. We are grateful for this chance to join your community of worlds." The Centauri leader spoke first. His voice sounded like wind through metal tubes. "We welcome humanity to our alliance. Your recent scientific achievements show great promise." The jellyfish being pulsed with different colors, which Tae-min knew, was how they talked. A translator device spoke its words. "We hope for peaceful cooperation between our species." Then Kliktar stepped forward. His compound eyes focused on the human group, studying each person carefully. When his gaze reached Tae-min, it stopped. Kliktar's head tilted to one side like a bird looking at something strange. "Interesting," Kliktar said. His voice was sharp and buzzing, like angry insects. "Humans bring weapons to a peace ceremony." Park's smile did not change, but Tae-min saw her shoulders tense slightly. Sergeant Kang is here for security, as is normal for diplomatic meetings. Kliktar's mandibles clicked together several times. To humans, it sounded like someone snapping twigs. But Taemin had learned that this was how Velthari laughed. Security, yes, Kliktar said. But why does your warrior carry such primitive tools? He pointed one of his forearms at Taemin's knife. Blade weapons? How quaint. Do your fighters still believe in Stone Age combat? Other aliens in the room began to whisper among themselves. Some pointed at Taemin's knife. Others made sounds that might have been laughter in their languages. Taemin felt his face grow hot, but he kept his expression blank and professional. Park stepped slightly forward, putting herself between Kliktar and Taemin. The sergeant carries standard military equipment. All items have been approved by station security. Of course, Kliktar said, still clicking with amusement. But surely a species advanced enough to improve our star drives would have moved beyond such basic tools. My people stopped using blades for combat 3,000 years ago. The whispers in the room grew louder. Taemin could feel the mood changing. What had started as a ceremony of welcome was turning into something else. He wanted to speak, to defend human military traditions, but his training kept him silent. A Marine did not speak unless spoken to directly. Kliktar continued, Perhaps this shows that humans, for all their recent success, still have much to learn about civilized warfare. One wonders if they are truly ready to join advanced society. Ambassador Park's smile became strained. I believe this ceremony is about welcoming humanity to your alliance, not criticizing our customs. Indeed, said the Centauri leader quickly. Let us continue with the formal presentations. But the damage was done. As the ceremony continued, Taemin noticed how the aliens looked at him. Some seemed worried, as if they thought he might attack someone with his knife. Others looked amused, as if he was a child playing soldier. A few looked disgusted, as if the knife made him dirty somehow. When the ceremony finally ended, Taemin followed Ambassador Park out of the room. In the hallway, she stopped and turned to him. Are you all right, Sergeant? Taemin nodded. Yes, ma'am. Just doing my job. Park studied his face. I know that was difficult. But remember, we represent all of humanity here. How we act in the next few days will shape how aliens see our entire species for generations. Understood, ma'am. As they walked back to their quarters, Taemin's hand unconsciously moved to touch the handle of his knife. It was a simple tool, but it meant something important. It connected him to thousands of years of human warriors who had fought to protect their people. Kliktar could laugh all he wanted. The knife would stay exactly where it was. 1 week after the ceremony, everything changed. Taemin was eating breakfast in the station cafeteria when the alarms started ringing. Not danger alarms, but the ones that meant important ships were arriving. He looked out the big window and saw 5 Velthari warships coming toward the station. The ships were beautiful and scary at the same time. They looked like giant insects made of metal and energy. Blue lights pulsed along their sides like heartbeats. Each ship was 3 times bigger than the largest human vessel. Well, this should be interesting, said Captain Lee Jinwoo, sitting down across from Taemin with his breakfast tray. Lee was the head of all human military people on the station. He was older than Taemin, with gray in his black hair and scars on his hands from old battles. Are we expecting trouble, sir? Taemin asked. Lee shook his head. Not trouble, just politics. Kliktar sent word that their military commander wants to visit, someone named Zekthul. He wants to see how humans fight. 2 hours later, Taemin stood in the docking bay watching the Velthari soldiers march off their ship. They moved in perfect lines, their forearms swinging in rhythm. Their chitinous armor was polished until it gleamed. Energy weapons hummed on their backs and force field generators glowed on their belts. At the front of the group walked Zekthul. He was even bigger than Kliktar, with darker armor and more scars. His compound eyes swept the docking bay like he was looking for threats. When he saw the human soldiers waiting to greet him, those eyes focused on them with sharp interest. Ambassador Park stepped forward to welcome the Velthari commander. Commander Zekthul, We are honored by your visit. Zekathol's mandibles clicked once. Ambassador, I come to learn about human military capabilities. My emperor wishes to know if your species can truly defend itself, or if you will be a burden to our alliance. Captain Lee moved to stand beside Park. We would be happy to demonstrate our training methods, Commander. Training, yes, Zekthul said. His voice was deeper than Klicktar's, like rocks grinding together. But I am more interested in seeing how humans fight when it matters. I propose a challenge. The docking bay became very quiet. Other aliens who had come to watch the arrival leaned forward to hear better. What kind of challenge? Park asked carefully. Zekthul gestured to his soldiers. A simple exercise. Capture the flag, as I believe you humans call it. My best warriors against yours. Non-lethal weapons only, of course. We are allies now. Lee and Park looked at each other. Taemin could see them having a silent conversation with their eyes. Finally, Lee nodded. We accept, Park said. When and where? Tomorrow, in the station's training facility, the neutral ground that all species use for military exercises. Zekthul's mandibles clicked several times. I am curious to see how primitive human tactics work against advanced alien warfare. The word primitive hung in the air like a challenge. Taemin felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his face blank. That evening, Lee called a meeting of all human military personnel on the station. There were only 12 of them total, 8 Marines, 2 Navy officers, 1 Army captain, and 1 Air Force pilot. They gathered in a small conference room that smelled like recycled air and coffee. All right, people, Lee said, looking around the table. Tomorrow we get to show the galaxy what human soldiers can do. No pressure or anything. Marine Corporal Kim Do-hyun raised his hand. He was young, maybe 22, with quick eyes and calloused hands. Sir, what exactly are we up against? Lee activated a hologram in the center of the table. It showed the layout of the training facility, a mock city with buildings, streets, and obstacles. Standard capture the flag setup. 2 bases, 1 flag each. First team to capture the enemy flag and bring it back to their base wins. What about their equipment? Asked Medical Officer Choi Hai-rin. She was the only woman in the group besides Park, and she was both a doctor and a combat medic. That's where it gets interesting, Lee said. Another hologram appeared showing Velthari weapons and armor. They use pure energy weapons, plasma rifles, ion cannons, particle beams. Their armor has built-in force fields that can stop most projectiles. They also use hover platforms for mobility. Do-hyun whistled softly. Sounds fancy. It is, Lee agreed. But remember, fancy doesn't always mean better. They've been fighting the same way for thousands of years. They're used to technology doing most of the work for them. Taemin spoke up. What are the rules of engagement, sir? Good question. All weapons will be set to stun mode. No permanent damage allowed. But beyond that, anything goes. Hand to hand. Combat is permitted. The Air Force pilot, Lieutenant Nam Soo-jin, frowned. They're bigger and stronger than us, sir. And they have natural armor. True, Lee said. But we have advantages, too. We're smaller and faster. We can fit through spaces they can't. And we've been training for close combat since we were children. Lee's eyes swept around the table, meeting each person's gaze. There's something else. Word of this challenge has spread through the station. Half the alien species in the Alliance will be watching tomorrow. How we perform will affect how they see all of humanity for years to come. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Taemin asked the question everyone was thinking. What's the real purpose of this challenge, sir? It's not just about training. Lee smiled grimly. Smart question, Sergeant. Zekthul wants to embarrass us. He wants to show the other aliens that humans are weak and primitive. If we lose badly enough, some species might vote to kick us out of the Alliance. And if we win? Do-hyun asked. If we win, we prove that human ingenuity and training can match alien technology. We show that we belong here. Hai-rin leaned forward. No pressure, right? The next morning, the training facility was packed with observers. Aliens from dozens of different species had come to watch. Some floated in the air, others sat in special chairs designed for their unique body shapes. The noise was incredible, a mixture of clicks, whistles, roars, and sounds that human ears couldn't properly understand. Taemin checked his equipment one more time. Standard plasma rifle, fully charged, sidearm locked and loaded with stun rounds. Grenade set to non-lethal mode, and strapped to his thigh, his combat knife. Across the training ground, the Velthari team was doing the same thing. Their equipment hummed with energy. Force fields flickered around their armor like soap bubbles, made of light. They moved with the confidence of soldiers who had never lost a battle. Zekthul approached Captain Lee for the final briefing. "Are your warriors ready, human?" "Ready as we'll ever be," Lee replied. Zekthul's compound eyes focused on Taemin's knife. "I see your soldiers still carry those primitive blades. Tell me, Captain, do you really think sharp metal will help against advanced armor and energy weapons?" Lee smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "You might be surprised, Commander." "I think not," Zekthul said. "My warriors have studied human combat footage. You fight like animals, all emotion and chaos. We fight with precision and superior technology. The outcome is obvious." Kliktar, who had come to watch the exercise, joined the conversation. "Perhaps after today, humans will understand the value of civilized warfare over barbaric customs." Taemin felt his hand move unconsciously toward his knife handle. Lee noticed and put a warning hand on his shoulder. "We'll see," Lee said quietly. Dar, station commander, a tall alien with blue skin and 3 eyes, stepped forward. "Teams, take your positions. The exercise will begin in 5 minutes." As the human team moved toward their starting position, Do-hyun jogged up beside Taemin. "Sergeant, what do you think our chances are?" Taemin looked across the training ground, at the Velthari warriors. They were bigger, stronger, and had better equipment. By every logical measure, the humans should lose badly, but logic didn't account for everything. "I think," Taemin said slowly, "they're about to learn why humans carry knives." The training facility looked like a real city, just smaller. There were buildings made of metal and concrete, streets wide enough for vehicles, and alleys dark enough to hide in. At each end of the area stood a base, simple structures with flags. On top, the human flag was blue with white stars. The Velthari flag was green with a golden insect symbol. Taemin crouched behind a concrete barrier, with Do-hyun and 2 other Marines. Captain Lee's voice came through their helmet radios. "Remember the plan. Stay mobile, use cover, and don't try to match their firepower. We're faster and smarter. Use that." Across the training ground, the Velthari team was spreading out in a perfect formation. They moved like they had practiced this exact scenario 1,000 times. Their hover platforms lifted them 3 feet off the ground, making them faster than walking, but also making them easier to see. "All teams, the exercise." "Begin now," announced the station commander. Immediately, the air filled with the sound of energy weapons. Bright blue beams shot between buildings. The Velthari advanced in a steady line, their force field generators crackling as they deflected the humans' plasma bolts. Their own return fire was precise and devastating, leaving black scorch marks on every surface it touched. Taemin aimed his rifle around the corner of his cover and fired 3 quick shots. All 3 beams hit the lead Velthari warrior but bounced harmlessly off his energy shield. The alien didn't even slow down. "This isn't working," Do-hyun muttered, ducking as return fire sizzled over their heads. "Fall back," Lee ordered over the radio. "Let them come to us." The human team scattered, using their smaller size to slip through gaps and doorways that the larger aliens couldn't easily follow. But the Velthari had expected this. They split into 2 groups, one going around each side of the central building complex. From his new position on a rooftop, Taemin watched the aliens advance. Their technology really was impressive. The hover platforms let them move over obstacles that would stop ground troops. Their energy shields made them almost invulnerable to the humans' weapons. And their plasma rifles had unlimited ammunition as long as the power cells held out. "We need a new plan," Lee said over the radio. They're going to reach our flag in about 10 minutes at this rate. Medical Officer Hayren's voice crackled through the comm. Captain, I'm seeing something strange on my scanner. There's some kind of electrical disturbance building up in the station's main power grid. What kind of disturbance? Lee asked. I don't know, but it's getting stronger. Almost like... Her voice was cut off by a loud humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Taemin looked up at the ceiling of the training facility. The lights were flickering. The humming got louder and louder until it was almost painful to hear. Then, suddenly, everything went quiet, and then everything went dark. Emergency lighting kicked in a few seconds later, bathing the training ground in dim red light. But something else had happened. All around the facility, energy weapons were powering down, force field generators were shutting off, hover platforms were dropping to the ground with loud crashes. What the hell? Do-hyun said, looking at his plasma rifle. The weapons display was completely dead. Taemin tried his own rifle. Nothing. He checked his sidearm. Also dead. All the high-tech equipment that both sides had been using was suddenly useless. Lee's voice came over the radio, but it was full of static. All teams, report, status. The radio was barely working. Whatever had happened had affected all the electronic systems in the facility. Down on the ground level, Taemin could see the Velthari warriors standing around their crashed hover platforms. They were clearly confused and angry. One of them was hitting his energy rifle with his fist, trying to make it work again. Then Taemin heard something that made him smile. From somewhere in the facility came the sound of human voices shouting orders. And mixed in with those voices was the sharp crack of kinetic weapons firing. Unlike the aliens, humans had brought backup weapons. Old-fashioned gunpowder firearms that didn't need sophisticated electronics to work. The Velthari had no such backup plan. Marines switched to secondary weapons, Lee's voice ordered through the static. All energy weapons are down, but our kinetic systems are still operational. Taemin slung his useless plasma rifle and drew his backup pistol, a simple slug thrower that his grandfather might have recognized. Do-hyun did the same, grinning as he chambered a round. Now this is more like it, Do-hyun said. Down below, the Velthari were trying to regroup. Without their technology, they looked much less impressive. Their natural armor was still tough, but they moved awkwardly without their hover platforms. Worse, they seemed to have no backup plan for when their advanced weapons failed. Taemin and Do-hyun moved down from the rooftop using a fire escape ladder. The facility was much darker now, with only the red emergency lights providing visibility. This actually helped the humans, who were used to fighting in poor conditions. They reached the ground level and began moving toward the Velthari flag. The alien base was only 2 blocks away, but those blocks were now filled with confused and angry Velthari warriors. Contact front, Do-hyun whispered, pointing around a corner. 3 Velthari soldiers were standing in the middle of the street, arguing in their clicking language. They kept trying to restart their weapons, but nothing was working. One of them threw his energy rifle down in frustration. Taemin signaled for Do-hyun to circle around to the left while he went right. They moved quietly, using doorways and debris for cover. The aliens were so focused on their broken equipment that they didn't notice the humans approaching. When they were close enough, Taemin stepped out of cover. Surrender, he called out in the basic alien trade language they had all learned. The 3 Velthari spun around, startled. For a moment, they just stared at the humans. Then one of them clicked something angry and charged forward, his arms spread wide. Taemin fired 3 quick shots from his pistol. The bullets hit the alien's chest armor and bounced off, but the impact was enough to stagger him. Do-hyun fired from the other side, his shots hitting the same target. The alien stumbled but kept coming. His natural armor was tough enough to stop the small-caliber bullets from causing serious damage. But the impacts were painful and disorienting. The other 2 aliens joined the attack. They had no weapons now, but they were still dangerous. Each one was 7 feet tall and weighed 3 times what a human did. Their chitinous arms ended in sharp points that could cut through metal. Do-hyun dodged a swipe from one of the aliens and backed up quickly. Sergeant, these things are tougher than they look. Taemin rolled to one side as another alien tried to grab him. His pistol was effective at stopping them, but it wasn't enough to put them down. The bullets just made them angry. Then he heard footsteps behind him. More Velthari were coming, drawn by the sound of fighting. Soon they would be outnumbered 10-1. "We need to move," Taemin said, firing another shot to keep the aliens back. But as they tried to retreat, Do-hyun stumbled over some debris and fell hard. One of the Velthari saw his chance and lunged forward, all four arms reaching for the fallen Marine. Taemin didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward his fellow Marine, knowing he wouldn't reach him in time. Do-hyun was raising his pistol, but the alien was too close and moving too fast. Then Do-hyun did something that surprised everyone, including himself. Instead of trying to shoot the charging alien, he rolled to one side and drew his combat knife. The Velthari warrior crashed down where Do-hyun had been lying. Before the alien could recover, Do-hyun was moving. The knife flicked out, finding a gap in the chitinous armor where the alien's leg joint connected to his hip. It was a precise cut, just deep enough to sever the tendons that controlled movement. The alien fell with a loud crash, his leg no longer able to support his weight. The other two Velthari stopped their attack, staring at their fallen comrade. They had never seen anything like it. In their culture, weapons were for killing enemies at a distance. The idea of precise surgical cuts designed to disable rather than destroy was completely foreign to them. Do-hyun stood up, his knife still in his hand. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "old ways work best." More Velthari voices could be heard approaching. Taemin grabbed Do-hyun's arm. "Come on, we need to report this to the captain." As they moved through the darkened facility toward their base, Taemin could hear fighting all around them. But it sounded different now. The sharp cracks of human gunfire mixed with alien clicks and the sounds of hand-to-hand combat. The aliens had better technology, but humans had something else. They had adaptability. They had backup plans for their backup plans. And when everything else failed, they had simple tools that had kept their species alive for thousands of years. The exercise was far from over, but something important had changed. The Velthari were learning that primitive didn't mean useless. Sometimes the oldest solutions were the best ones. Do-hyun was alone when it happened. He had been moving through the lower levels of the training facility, trying to reach the Velthari flag through the maintenance tunnels. It was a good plan. The tunnels were too small for the 7-foot aliens to follow easily, but plans don't always work. He had just climbed up through a floor hatch when he heard the clicking sounds. 3 Velthari warriors were waiting for him in the narrow maintenance corridor. They had found another way down here, probably through one of the larger access shafts. Do-hyun tried to back down through the hatch, but it was too late. The nearest alien grabbed the edge of the opening with 2 of his arms, blocking the escape route. The other 2 moved to surround the young Marine. "Human," one of them said in broken English. "You are trapped." Do-hyun raised his pistol and fired twice. The bullet struck the nearest alien's chest armor and bounced off with sharp pinging sounds. The aliens didn't even flinch. He fired again, aiming for the joints where the armor plates met. One bullet found a gap near the shoulder, and the alien hissed in pain. But it wasn't enough to stop him. The aliens moved closer. In the narrow corridor, there was no room to dodge or run. Do-hyun kept firing until his pistol clicked empty. He reached for his spare magazine, but the nearest alien was already lunging forward. 4 chitinous arms wrapped around Do-hyun, lifting him off the ground. The alien's mandibles clicked with satisfaction as he squeezed. Do-hyun felt his ribs creak under the pressure. "Your primitive weapons cannot harm us, soft skin," the alien holding him said, "and your small body breaks so easily." Do-hyun struggled, but it was like fighting a machine. The alien's natural armor was too thick, his grip too strong. The other 2 Velthari moved closer, ready to help finish the captured human. That's when Do-hyun remembered his training. Not the fancy combat courses or the high-tech weapon systems, the old training. The basic training that every Marine learned, passed down from generations of human warriors. His right hand moved to the knife on his thigh. The blade whispered out of its sheath with barely a sound. "Your primitive blade cannot pierce our natural armor, soft skin," the alien holding him said, noticing the knife. Do-hyun didn't answer. Instead, he studied his enemy carefully. The Velthari were strong and well-armored, but they had weaknesses. Every living thing had weaknesses. The chitinous plates that protected them were like the shells of giant crabs. They were very hard, but they had to be flexible at the joints to allow movement. And where there was flexibility, there were gaps. Do-hyun's knife moved with surgical precision. He didn't try to cut through the armor. Instead, he found the thin line where the alien's arm joint connected to his shoulder. The blade slipped between the plates like a key finding a lock. The alien's grip loosened immediately as the tendons controlling his arm were severed. Do-hyun dropped to the floor and rolled away before the other aliens could react. "Impossible," one of them hissed. "You cannot harm us with such crude tools." Do-hyun stood up slowly, his knife held low and ready. "You're thinking about this wrong," he said calmly. "This isn't a crude tool. It's a precise instrument." The wounded alien was holding his useless arm, green blood seeping between his fingers. He stared at Do-hyun with a mixture of pain and confusion. "How? Our armor is impenetrable." "Your armor is very good," Do-hyun agreed. "But every armor has weak points. Every living thing has joints and tendons and pressure points. You just have to know where to look." The other two aliens glanced at each other uncertainly. They had never fought an enemy who targeted specific anatomical weaknesses instead of trying to overpower them with brute force. "You are still outnumbered, human," one of them said. But he sounded less confident now. "Yes," Do-hyun said, "but numbers don't mean everything." The first alien charged, his three good arms reaching for the Marine. Do-hyun sidestepped and let him pass, then struck with the knife as he went by. Another precise cut, this time behind the alien's knee where the leg joint was protected only by flexible connective tissue. The alien crashed to the floor, his leg no longer able to support his weight. He wasn't seriously injured, but he was effectively out of the fight. The third alien was more cautious now. He approached slowly, trying to grab the knife with one hand while striking with the others. But Do-hyun had trained for this kind of close combat since he was 18 years old. He ducked under the alien's reaching arms and moved inside his guard. The knife found the nerve cluster where the alien's neck met his torso, a spot that wasn't heavily armored because it needed to allow head movement. The alien's legs gave out instantly as his nervous system was temporarily disrupted. He collapsed. Paralyzed but unharmed, Do-hyun stepped back, breathing hard. Three aliens who should have been able to crush him easily were now lying on the floor of the corridor. None of them was seriously injured, but all of them were unable to continue fighting. "Your blade," the first alien said weakly. "It's not a weapon, it's a tool for surgery." "Same thing sometimes," Do-hyun replied. "Human soldiers learn anatomy and biology as part of our training. We study how bodies work so we know how to fix them when they're broken. But that knowledge works both ways." He knelt down beside the wounded aliens and checked their injuries. The cuts were clean and precise, designed to disable without causing permanent damage. Medical Officer Hae-rin had taught all the Marines basic field medicine, including how to treat different alien physiologies. "Why do you help us?" asked the alien with the damaged arm. "We are your enemies in this exercise." Do-hyun used strips, torn from his uniform, to bandage the alien's wounds. "Because the exercise is about winning, not about hurting people. My job is to complete the mission and get everyone home safely." The sound of footsteps echoed through the corridor. More soldiers were coming, but these were human voices. Taemin appeared around the corner, followed by two other Marines. "Do-hyun, we heard fighting. Are you—" Taemin stopped when he saw the three Velthari on the floor. "What happened here?" "I got cornered," Do-hyun said simply. "Had to improvise." Taemin looked at the aliens, then at Do-hyun's knife, then back at the aliens. "You did this with just the knife?" "They're tougher than they look, but every armor has weak points," Do-hyun said. "Just like Instructor Park taught us back in basic training. Know your enemy's anatomy better than your own." One of the other Marines whistled softly. "Damn, Do-hyun. Remind me never to arm wrestle you." The alien with the paralyzed legs tried to speak. "Human, your fighting style. It is not what we expected." "What did you expect?" Do-hyun asked, still checking the alien's vital signs. "Brutal attacks, Wild emotion. Barbaric charging with crude weapons. The alien's mandibles clicked slowly. We thought your species fought like animals. Do-hyun finished bandaging the last wound and stood up. We do fight like animals, but humans are very smart animals. We use tools. We study our opponents. We adapt to new situations. Taemin's radio crackled with Captain Lee's voice. All teams, report status. The power grid is coming back online. Around them, lights began to flicker, back to normal brightness. The sound of energy weapons charging up could be heard in the distance. Sergeant Kang here, Taemin replied. We've secured the lower maintenance level. 3 enemy combatants disabled but unharmed. Good work. Fall back to Rally Point Alpha. We're preparing for the final push. As the human team prepared to move out, the wounded alien called after them. Wait, human soldiers. What you did here, it changes things. Do-hyun turned back. How so? We thought your knives were primitive weapons for primitive people. We were wrong. They are tools for thinking fighters. There is a difference. Yes, Do-hyun said quietly. There is. As they left the aliens behind, with working communicators so they could call for medical assistance, Taemin shook his head in amazement. Do you realize what just happened? He asked Do-hyun. I completed the mission? You just showed them that. Human primitive weapons aren't primitive at all. They're sophisticated tools used by sophisticated fighters. Taemin smiled grimly. I think we're about to win more than just this exercise. Above them, the training facility hummed with renewed energy as the power systems came fully online. But something had changed during those dark minutes when technology failed. The Velthari were learning that humans didn't carry knives because they were primitive. They carried knives because they were prepared for anything. The exercise ended 2 hours later with the humans capturing the Velthari flag. But by then, nobody was talking about who won or lost. They were talking about what they had witnessed in those dark corridors. Medical Officer Hai Rin was treating the wounded aliens in the station's medical bay. Her patients were surprisingly cooperative, asking detailed questions about human fighting methods while she worked on their injuries. Your cuts are very precise, observed the Velthari warrior whose arm Do-hyun had disabled. You target specific anatomical structures to achieve maximum effect with minimum damage. Hayrin nodded as she sealed the last wound with a medical scanner. All human soldiers learn basic anatomy and field medicine. We believe in disabling enemies when possible, rather than destroying them. This is not how we were told humans fight, said another patient. We heard stories of wild berserkers who killed everything in their path. Some humans have fought that way, Hayrin admitted. But most of us prefer to think before we act. Violence should be precise and purposeful, not wild and destructive. Commander Zekthul entered the medical bay, his massive form filling the doorway. He looked at his wounded warriors, then at the human medic treating them. Doctor, he said, his voice unusually quiet. May I speak with you? Hayrin finished her work and turned to face him. Of course, Commander. My warriors tell me that the human who defeated them also treated their wounds afterward. Is this normal behavior for your soldiers? Yes, Hayrin said simply. We fight when we have to, but we don't hate our enemies. When the fighting stops, we help whoever needs help. Zekthul's compound eyes studied her for a long moment. I think I have misunderstood your species. Meanwhile, in the station's main conference room, Captain Lee was giving his mission report to a room full of alien observers. Ambassador Park sat beside him, along with representatives from a dozen different species. The exercise demonstrated several key points about human military doctrine, Lee was saying. First, we believe in redundancy. When our primary weapons failed, we had backup systems ready. When those failed, we had tertiary options. Kliktar leaned forward in his floating chair. But why carry primitive weapons when you have advanced technology? Lee smiled. Because technology can fail. Power systems can go down. Ammunition can run out. Equipment can break. But human determination, training, and adaptability, those are constants. The Centauri representative spoke up. Are you saying That humans prepare for every possible scenario? We try to, Lee replied. We have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Our soldiers carry knives because sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes the situation becomes personal. Personal? Asked the jellyfish-like being from the deep worlds. When you're face to face with an enemy, Park explained. When there's no technology between you, no long-range weapons, no electronic aids. When it comes down to individual skill, training, and will to survive. Lee stood up and gestured to Tae-min, who was standing at attention near the door. Sergeant, would you please show them your knife? Tae-min drew his combat knife and held it up for everyone to see. In the bright lights of the conference room, it looked simple and unimpressive compared to all the high-tech equipment around it. This blade represents something fundamental about humanity, Lee continued. It's not just a weapon, it's a symbol of our refusal to give up, no matter how bad things get. When everything else fails, we still have this. And we know how to use it. An alien with multiple tentacles raised one appendage. But surely in an age of space travel and energy weapons, such tools are obsolete. Are they? Lee asked. Corporal Do-hyun, would you please tell them what happened in the maintenance corridor? Do-hyun stepped forward. He was still young, but he carried himself differently now. The events of the exercise had changed something in him. I was outnumbered 3-1, he said. My energy weapons were dead. My projectile weapon couldn't penetrate their armor. According to every tactical manual, I should have surrendered. The room was completely quiet. But I had options they didn't expect, Do-hyun continued. Not because I had better technology, but because I had better training. I knew how their bodies worked. I knew where they were vulnerable. The knife wasn't just a weapon. It was a surgical tool used with medical knowledge. Zekthul entered the conference room, his heavy footsteps announcing his arrival. All eyes turned to him as he approached the center of the room. I came here to test human military capabilities, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. I expected to find primitive warriors with crude tactics. I was wrong. He turned to face Captain Lee directly. Your soldiers fight with intelligence, not just courage. They prepare for scenarios that we never consider. They carry backup plans for their backup plans. Kliktar's mandibles clicked nervously. Commander, surely you're not suggesting that their primitive methods are superior to our advanced warfare? I'm saying, Zekthul replied, that there is nothing primitive about being prepared. When our technology failed, we were helpless. When their technology failed, they adapted and continued fighting. The commander's gaze swept around the room, meeting the eyes of representatives from every species present. The human knife is not a symbol of primitiveness, he declared. It is a symbol of preparedness, of never giving up, of thinking 3 steps ahead of your enemy. Ambassador Park stood up slowly. Commander Zekthul, I believe you've learned something important today. Yes, he agreed. I have learned that strength comes in many forms. Physical power and advanced technology are only 2 of them. Mental flexibility and tactical innovation are perhaps more valuable. The Centauri representative leaned forward. What are you proposing, Commander? I am proposing that the Velthari Empire would like to establish a military exchange program with humanity. We have much to learn from each other. A murmur ran through the room. Several other alien representatives began talking among themselves, in their various languages. Kliktar looked uncomfortable. Commander, with respect, our Emperor sent you here to evaluate human weaknesses, not to praise their strengths. Zekthul's mandibles clicked once, not with amusement this time, but with finality. Then the Emperor will be surprised by my report. I will tell him that humanity's greatest strength is their refusal to depend entirely on any one thing, including strength itself. After the formal meeting ended, the various groups began to break up. Many aliens approached the human delegation with questions about training methods and tactical philosophy, but Kliktar remained in his chair looking troubled. Tae-min noticed him sitting alone and approached carefully. Representative Kliktar, are you all right? Kliktar's compound eyes focused on him. Sergeant Kang, I owe you an apology. Sir, a week ago I mocked your knife. I called it primitive. I suggested that humans were too savage for civilized society. Kliktar's mandibles moved slowly. I was wrong on all counts. Tae-min considered this for a moment. Then, to Kliktar's surprise, he drew his knife and offered it handle first to the alien. "What is this?" Kliktar asked. "A gift," Tae-min said simply. "From one warrior to another." Kliktar's forearms trembled slightly as he accepted the knife. I cannot accept this. It is clearly valuable to you." "It is," Tae-min agreed. "That's why it's a meaningful gift. This blade represents thousands of years of human military tradition. It connects me to every warrior who came before me." "Then why give it away?" Tae-min smiled. "Because now it will connect you to them too. And maybe it will help you understand that being prepared for anything isn't primitive, it's wise." Kliktar held the knife carefully, studying its simple lines and practical design. "I will treasure this gift, Sergeant, and I will remember the lesson that came with it." As the various delegations prepared to leave the conference room, Ambassador Park approached Captain Lee. "Well," she said quietly, "I think that went better than expected." Lee nodded. "Sometimes the best diplomacy happens when you stop trying to impress people and just show them who you really are." "And who are we, Captain?" Lee looked around the room at the aliens who were still talking animatedly about human military methods. Several were asking if they could arrange training exchanges with human forces. "We're the species that carries knives to energy weapon fights," he said. "Not because we're primitive, but because we're prepared for anything." Outside the conference room, Tae-min walked through the station corridors with a lighter step. His knife was gone, but somehow that felt right. He had given away a piece of metal, but he had gained something more valuable: the knowledge that other species could learn to understand humanity. Tomorrow, there would be new challenges. There would be diplomatic meetings and military exercises, and all the complicated business of building relationships with alien civilizations. But Tae-min was ready for whatever came next. After all, humans were very good at being prepared for anything.